I thought the worst thing that could happen in a marriage was betrayal. Turns out it's being slowly erased by the person you love until one day you realize you're just a guest in your own life. That's where my story starts. Not with a fight or betrayal or some life-shattering moment. Just silence. Heavy, awkward, suffocating silence. My name is Ethan. I'm 36 years old, a financial strategist living in Denver, Colorado. My job's demanding, but I like it. Numbers don't lie. Models make sense. You feed in the variables and you get a picture of what might come next. I wish relationships worked like that. I met Lauren 8 years ago at a fundraiser gala for a nonprofit I volunteered with. She wasn't on the guest list, she came as someone's plus one, a last-minute replacement, but she walked in like she owned the place. She wore a red dress that clashed with her lipstick and didn't care. She laughed loudly, asked blunt questions, and didn't blink when I told her I worked in finance. "I'm in PR," she said. "But don't hold it against me. I know we're supposed to hate each other." We spent the entire night talking. She drank wine, I drank whiskey. She teased me for my tie, I complimented her for wearing flats at a black tie event. It was easy. Instant. Like something that was already written and we just had to read it aloud. When we got married 2 years later, people said we were perfect together, her fire, my calm. I believed them. She left her job 6 months after the wedding. Said she wanted to recharge. I was doing well financially and I supported her. Of course I did. I wanted her to be happy. If I could just have a few months to figure things out, she told me. Just a break. Those few months became 8 years. But that's getting ahead of myself. Back then, we were still good. We lived in a clean, modern 2-bedroom apartment in Rhino, all glass and steel and exposed brick. She filled it with plants. I filled it with books. We had a rhythm. Weekdays were mine, long hours, market meetings, spreadsheets that made my brain buzz. Weekends were hers, spontaneous road trips, new restaurants, art galleries. She made the ordinary feel extravagant. But slowly, imperceptibly, something began to shift. It started with little things. Lauren would sigh when we walked past certain shops. She'd scroll through Instagram and linger on influencers with lavish vacations and marble kitchen islands. I thought it was harmless. Aspirational, maybe. Once, while looking at vacation photos of a couple she followed, she muttered, "Must be nice to have a husband who prioritizes lifestyle." I was standing right there. I laughed it off at the time. That's what I did with small things. Laughed. Reassured. Brushed away. But small things accumulate. One grain of sand after another until you're buried alive. She stopped asking me about work. Not in a hostile way, more like she was bored. Distracted. She'd nod through my updates like I was talking about someone else's life. I started staying later at the office. Not because I had to, but because it felt easier than going home to someone who looked at me like I was invisible. Still, I didn't think anything was truly wrong. Not really. We weren't fighting. We still slept in the same bed. Still texted during the day. Still made each other coffee in the mornings. But the silence was there. Sitting with us. Watching. Then came Cynthia. The first time Lauren mentioned her mom coming to visit, she said it casually, like someone asking if it might rain tomorrow. "Mom might come stay with us for a bit," she said, spooning almond butter into a smoothie. "She's going through another one of her things." I was half asleep, leaning against the counter in gym clothes, trying to get a grip on the day. Things with Cynthia were never just things. They were meltdowns. Moves. Men. The trifecta. What happened this time? I asked. "Some guy in Napa," she said, rolling her eyes. "Older. Rich. Surprise, surprise." She left her job and moved in with him after 3 dates. Thought it was fate. Turned out he just wanted someone to take care of his dogs. "Charming," I muttered. "She's embarrassed. Doesn't want to go back to LA yet? Just needs somewhere to decompress for a few weeks." Weeks. Always weeks. I wasn't thrilled. Cynthia had never liked me. She smiled a lot, tight-lipped and polite, but there was something behind her eyes, something cool and calculating. She had a way of talking that felt like being examined, like I was a draft she was mentally editing. Still, I didn't push back. I knew better. Lauren's relationship with her mother was complicated. Equal parts admiration and resentment. A toxic kind of loyalty that smelled like perfume but burned like bleach. "She can stay in the guest room," I said. But maybe we set a boundary this time. Like an actual date for her to head home. Lauren didn't respond. Just sipped her smoothie and stared out the window. Cynthia arrived 2 days later. She swept in with 2 overstuffed suitcases, an enormous sun hat, and a cloud of perfume that lingered in every room she entered. She hugged Lauren like they hadn't spoken in years, even though they FaceTimed almost daily. She gave me a hug too, tight, bony, and sincere. Ethan, she said, smiling like a socialite spotting a waiter. You look tired. It wasn't a question. She settled in immediately, rearranged the guest room, brought her own French press and insisted on using it every morning. Took over the TV like it was hers. And she started watching Lauren. I mean really watching her. You've gained a little weight, sweetheart, I heard her say on the second night. You sure all that almond butter's a good idea? Lauren laughed, but it wasn't the easy kind. It was the brittle, performative laugh I'd started hearing more and more. A laugh that sounded like trying not to cry. I wanted to defend her. Say something. But Lauren brushed it off with a wave. That's just how she is. No. That's how she chooses to be. A few nights later, I walked into the living room and found them deep in conversation. Cynthia had a glass of wine in one hand, her reading glasses in the other, and was gesturing toward the TV where some real estate show played on mute. All I'm saying, she said, is that you could have had that life. With the right man. You still could. Lauren didn't argue. She didn't laugh. She just sat there, her face unreadable. I cleared my throat. They both turned. Want something to eat? I asked. My voice sounded smaller than I wanted it to. I'm good, Lauren said too quickly. Cynthia gave me a long, deliberate smile. You always know your way around the kitchen. That's nice. It was a compliment on paper, but it sounded like a dig. I went to the fridge anyway, but my appetite was gone. I couldn't explain it yet, not in a way that made sense, but something in the air had shifted. The woman I married was still there, but she was harder to find. She looked at her reflection longer. She looked at me less. Cynthia whispered poison with the softness of a mother's voice. And Lauren was beginning to drink it. I used to think that if things were really going wrong, you'd know it. You'd wake up one morning and the sky would look off. The air would be too still. Something would be obviously broken. But the truth is, when a marriage starts to rot, it doesn't usually smell. Not right away. It starts in the spaces between sentences. Like when Lauren stopped asking how my day was. Or when I stopped volunteering the answer. I'd come home from work, usually after 10-hour days dealing with stubborn investors and fragile market trends, and find the two of them on the couch, Lauren with her knees tucked under her, Cynthia sipping wine like she belonged there. One evening I stepped in and Cynthia looked at me, all theatrical concern. Ethan, you work so much. Isn't it exhausting to be so tired all the time? I blinked. It's part of the job. She turned to Lauren. Sweetheart, remember when I dated that trader in Malibu? He was always tired too. Made millions, but God, what a bore. Lauren smiled, thin and polite. I waited for her to defend me. She didn't. I'm not boring, I said quietly. Neither of them responded. That night in bed, I turned toward Lauren. Her back was to me. Her breathing was slow, even. I wasn't sure if she was asleep or pretending. Do you think I'm boring? I asked the darkness. Nothing. I lay there staring at the ceiling, my chest hollow and humming with unanswered questions. The next morning, I woke up early, hoping to leave before either of them got up. I needed space, time to recalibrate. I sat in the car outside the office for 20 minutes just breathing. That day, I didn't even check my phone. I didn't want to see a text from Lauren, or worse, silence. When I got home, the energy in the apartment was off. There was music playing, something soft and jazzy, and the kitchen smelled like burnt garlic. I walked in to find Cynthia in one of Lauren's robes, standing barefoot in my kitchen. Oh. You're home early, she said. It was 6:45. Where's Lauren? She pointed vaguely toward the bedroom. She had a migraine. I made pasta. She set a plate in front of me. It was too garlicky and undercooked. I picked at it. Then Cynthia sat down across from me, wine in hand, and just looked at me for a long beat. You know, she said, Lauren used to talk about how inspired she felt by you. How smart you were. Ambitious. I didn't say anything. I knew there was a but coming. But lately, she continued, she's been unsettled. She's told you that? I asked. Cynthia tilted her head. Not in words. But a mother knows. I clenched my jaw. She's young. Beautiful. She has potential. You're stable. And stability's not bad. It's just safe. I finished for her. Cynthia smiled like I'd given the correct answer. I stood up, plate untouched. You're a guest in my home, I said. I'm her mother. Yes. Which means you should be protecting her peace, not poisoning it. She raised her eyebrows. Is that what you think I'm doing? I left the kitchen without answering. Lauren was lying in bed, lights off, the curtains drawn. I sat at the edge of the mattress. She told me you're unsettled, I said. Lauren sighed. She overanalyzes everything. Is she wrong? She didn't answer. I turned to her. Are you unhappy? She looked at me then, and her eyes were watery. I don't know. That broke something open in me. It wasn't anger. It wasn't betrayal. It was worse. It was doubt. 2 weeks after that night, we went to dinner with Lauren's old friend Kara and her husband Josh. We hadn't seen them in almost a year, not since their startup had been acquired and they moved into a new home in Cherry Creek. From the moment we stepped into the restaurant, a trendy rooftop spot with $30 appetizers, I felt it. That subtle shift in Lauren's posture. The way she leaned into Kara's world like she was trying to climb into it. Kara wore a cream blazer, gold hoops, and talked about investment portfolios and passive income streams. Josh bragged about their second Tesla like it was a child they'd conceived. I ordered a bourbon. Lauren ordered sparkling water with lime. As the conversation circled around homes, vacation properties, ski passes, and equity deals, I saw it on Lauren's face. The tightening of her jaw, the polite smile, the way she nodded even when she didn't understand half of what Josh was saying. She didn't ask me to explain it to her. She just didn't look at me. Later, in the car, she was quiet. I thought she was tired. But halfway home, she asked, "Do you ever feel like we're behind?" Behind what? People like Kara and Josh. They're our age and they're building things. I kept my hands on the wheel. I am building something. You know that. I'm not talking about numbers, she said. I mean, a future. A lifestyle. We travel. We live well. What exactly are we missing? She didn't answer. I knew the answer anyway. Prestige. Status. Shine. The next morning, I caught her scrolling through Zillow listings for $2 million homes in areas I couldn't pronounce. I asked if she was thinking of moving. No, she said. Just browsing. Seeing what's out there. That night, Cynthia made her usual commentary during dinner. Saw Kara's housewarming on Instagram, she said. Absolutely stunning. Can't believe how quickly they've grown. Some people just have that spark, don't they? I looked at Lauren. She didn't flinch, didn't defend, just kept eating. I pushed my chair back. I'm going to work late tonight. Lauren said nothing. In the office, I sat under fluorescent lights long after the building emptied. I wasn't doing anything productive. Just staring at numbers, willing them to distract me. But numbers don't lie, and the truth was starting to bleed through the formulas. I was being compared to richer men, flashier men, men with Teslas and Tesla's worth of arrogance. And I was starting to lose. By the third week of Cynthia's stay, the apartment no longer felt like mine. Her perfume clung to every surface. Her voice was always floating in the background. She moved through our space like she owned it, adjusting picture frames, changing the thermostat, commenting on my routine, like I was a creature to be observed. Worse, she'd made herself indispensable to Lauren. Every day, I came home to some new change. New pillows, new glassware, new wellness habits Lauren had never cared about before. Kale in the fridge, crystal coasters on the coffee table. Books with titles like Manifesting Wealth and Feminine Power. One night, I came home to find the two of them curled up on the couch like teenage girls. They were watching a show about women leaving their husbands to find themselves. Cynthia saw me and smiled like a cat that just swallowed the bird. I told Lauren she needs to prioritize herself, she said. No offense, Ethan, but men often make us forget who we were before them. I looked at Lauren. She didn't laugh. She didn't say, "Come on, Mom." She didn't even look at me. That silence was worse than any insult. That night in bed, I tried again. Gently. "Do you feel forgotten?" Lauren rolled over. "Why are you always asking me that?" "Because I want to understand you. But lately it feels like you're talking to everyone but me." She exhaled hard. "I don't need to be understood like a puzzle, Ethan. I need to feel seen. There's a difference." "I see you," I said, but she turned away. The next morning, I found Cynthia in the kitchen with her phone speaker on. She was talking to someone. Loudly. I told her, "Don't wait for permission to change your life. Men always want credit for trying. Trying doesn't pay the bills. Trying doesn't make a woman feel like a queen." I didn't say a word. I just walked past her and grabbed my keys. At the office, I stared out the window most of the day. I kept wondering what version of me Cynthia was constructing behind closed doors. Was I the husband who didn't support dreams? The one who stifled growth? The one too busy to appreciate what he had? None of it was true, but perception is a dangerous thing, especially when it becomes a shared language between a mother and a daughter, especially when the daughter starts speaking it fluently. 3 weeks before the implosion, I booked us a getaway. It was supposed to be for just us, Lauren and me. A weekend retreat at a mountain resort in Aspen. Not one of the ultra-luxury ones, but still upscale, quiet, intimate, designed for couples who needed to remember why they fell in love. I told her about it over breakfast. She blinked, surprised. Really? Yeah, just us. No work, no stress, fresh air. You used to love hikes and fireplaces. Remember? She smiled. Not the full version I remembered, but a flicker. That sounds really nice. For a brief moment, I felt the pulse of something warm between us. Like maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back. And then she said, "Do you think it would be weird if Mom came too?" I dropped my fork. Lauren, it's a couple's retreat. She wouldn't do the romantic stuff, obviously. She could do her own thing while we have our time. She's just been so cooped up lately, and I thought it might be good for all of us. I looked at her, and all I could think was, when did our marriage become a group project? But I said, okay, because I still had hope. Hope that maybe, away from the city, from Kara and Josh and Cynthia's carefully curated drama, I could reach the version of Lauren I used to know. The morning we left, Cynthia packed like she was relocating. She had 2 Louis Vuitton bags, a garment case, and a tote bag full of skincare products. "Hope this place has decent sheets," she said, strapping on sunglasses at 7 a.m. I have sensitive skin. The 3-hour drive was mostly quiet. Lauren fell asleep halfway through. Cynthia played the role of passive-aggressive co-pilot, critiquing my driving style, the choice of music, and the brand of water I kept in the car. "I thought you financial types drank Pellegrino," she mused, eyeing my Dasani like it was tap water from a gas station. When we finally pulled up to the resort, charming log architecture nestled between snow-dusted pines, Lauren lit up. "Wow," she said. "It's beautiful." Cynthia stepped out and looked around like she was inspecting a crime scene. She said. "It's cute, rustic, a little budget-conscious." I ignored her. The front desk welcomed us with complimentary drinks and warm cookies. Lauren and I had a suite. Cynthia had her own room down the hall. For a second, I thought maybe it would work, that she'd go nap or read one of her passive-aggressive paperbacks. But Cynthia followed us into our suite, just to check it out. "Queen bed?" she asked. "Not a king." "It's a king," I said too flatly. She opened the minibar, made a face at the wine selection, then sat on the edge of the bed like she was evaluating a purchase. "I hope the food's better than the furniture," she muttered. I waited for Lauren to say something. She didn't. We went to dinner at the lodge that night. Soft lighting, live acoustic music, couples laughing in cozy booths. Cynthia ordered for herself and Lauren. Sent her wine back. Twice. "This Pinot is sour," she told the server. "Do you have anything not stored next to cleaning supplies?" When her steak came out medium instead of medium rare, she flagged the waiter and launched into a lecture about standards. Lauren chuckled. "She's just picky." But I wasn't laughing. Later, back in our room, I tried to make a move. Reach for Lauren, touch her shoulder, maybe start a conversation about us. But she looked distracted. Her phone buzzed. "Mom says her room heater's too loud," she said. She asked if we could switch. My hand dropped. We didn't kiss that night. We didn't talk. We lay side by side, both staring at the ceiling, surrounded by too many blankets and not enough warmth. And I thought, I brought my wife on vacation to get her back. But somehow I'm the one who feels like the outsider. The second day of the trip started with Cynthia complaining that the breakfast eggs were the color of depression, and ended with me wondering how many more times I could swallow my anger before it choked me. Lauren wanted to go into town, so we drove to a little mountain village nearby, Quaint shops, cobbled streets, overpriced candles and cocoa. The kind of place we used to love. Cynthia came, of course. Fresh air is good for my circulation, she said, like anyone had asked. At a boutique, Lauren tried on scarves. I waited near the window, watching couples walk by, arms linked, laughing like the cold didn't touch them. One of them reminded me of us. Years ago, Cynthia drifted over. Don't you want to buy her something? She asked. I will, I said. She smirked. Well, just don't be safe about it. I turned. What's that supposed to mean? She raised an eyebrow. Nothing, Ethan. Just that women remember when men take risks for them. Especially when it comes to gestures. I stared at her. Do you ever get tired of acting like this? She tilted her head. Like what? Like every conversation is a test I'm failing. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Some men need a little pressure to become diamonds. I walked out of the store before I said something I couldn't take back. That night was the wine tasting event at the lodge, part of the weekend package. I dressed in a dark sweater Lauren always said she liked. She wore a red dress. Not the same one from the night we met, but close enough to stir a memory. I offered her my arm on the walk down. She hesitated, then took it. I thought maybe, just maybe, we could salvage this. The lodge had been transformed. Soft lights, flickering candles, a jazz trio in the corner. We were seated with two other couples, both friendly, both clearly enjoying each other. Lauren seemed lighter, laughing, chatting. Cynthia sat with us. Of course. By the third glass of wine, she was holding court, regaling the table with stories of her exes. And then I told him, darling, if you want a woman who'll cook for you and stay quiet, buy a blender and a dog. Laughter. She turned to me. Not that you'd ever want that, right, Ethan? I smiled thinly. No. I've always admired strong personalities. She leaned in. You married one. But I do wonder if you expected her to dim over time. I saw Lauren freeze slightly. She didn't stop her, though. She didn't say, that's enough, Mom. So I said what I expected. Cynthia was a partner, not a performance. The table went quiet. Cynthia sipped her wine. Careful, Ethan. The more you raise your voice, the more it sounds like guilt. That was it. I stood up, politely excused myself from the table, and walked straight out into the cold. The air outside was sharp, biting clean. I stood on the edge of the snow-covered patio, staring out at the dark trees, my breath visible in the night. And for the first time in months, I let myself feel it. Not the anger. Not the frustration. The grief. The grief of realizing you are no longer with the person you love, but beside them. The grief of knowing you brought someone to a mountaintop, hoping to reconnect, and ended up more alone than ever. We returned from Aspen on a Monday evening. Cynthia rode shotgun the whole way, critiquing the playlist and reminding us every few miles that the resort wasn't worth the brochure it was printed on. Lauren was silent in the back seat. I drove with one hand on the wheel and the other trying not to shake. The silence between Lauren and me wasn't cold anymore. It was something worse. It was resignation. That week passed in a blur of routine. I woke up early, worked late, and came home to an apartment that no longer felt like it was mine. Cynthia had rearranged the living room. There were new throws, candles, a tray of imported teas nobody asked for. Then came the Friday dinner. Lauren invited a couple over. Friends of hers from a local art gallery. Wealthy. Quirky. The kind of people who drink gin from mismatched glasses and talk about trips to Portugal like their errands. I came home straight from work, still in slacks, sleeves rolled, trying to shake the exhaustion, and saw the table set, candles lit, Cynthia at the stove like she was hosting. Where's Lauren? I asked. In the bedroom getting ready. Go change, Cynthia said. You look managerial. The comment didn't land like a joke. Nothing did anymore. I changed. Put on something Lauren liked, used to like. Navy sweater. Crisp collar. When I came back down, the guests had arrived. Lauren greeted them with wine and laughter I hadn't heard in weeks. She was radiant, charming, conversational. The woman I fell in love with, except none of it was directed at me. Over dinner, the conversation turned to relationships. The other couple, Tim and Callie, shared a story about a sabbatical they took from each other. 6 months apart to realign their energies. Cynthia laughed, sipping her wine. Honestly, I think more couples should admit when they've grown apart. Callie nodded. It's about growth. If your partner isn't evolving, what are you really building? And then Cynthia looked straight at me. Lauren's evolving. That much is obvious. It was deliberate. Like a line she'd been waiting to drop all week. The table went quiet. I looked at Lauren. She didn't deny it. Didn't even flinch. She just kept sipping her wine. Something in my chest cracked. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a quiet final break. I stood up. "I'm sorry," I said, voice low. "I can't do this." Everyone looked at me. "I've tried. God knows I've tried. But I will not sit in my own home and be spoken about like a placeholder." "Ethan," Lauren started. "No," I said, holding up a hand. "I've listened to enough monologues. If you're evolving, Lauren, then evolve. But I'm done shrinking to make room for your mother's bitterness." Cynthia scoffed. This is exactly the kind of emotional immaturity I warned her about. I turned to her. Calm. Ice cold. "No, Cynthia. What you are is a saboteur. You came into our home and slowly dismantled our marriage, piece by piece, under the disguise of concern. And Lauren let you." Lauren flinched. I looked at her again. "You let her turn you into someone who can't even recognize when a man is trying to love you." The room was still. Even the air felt suspended. Then I left. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I just walked out. Because you can only beg to be seen for so long before you accept the truth. Some people would rather keep you blurry than admit you're real. I didn't go far that night, just checked into a nondescript business hotel on the east side. One of those places where the lobby smells like old coffee and desperation. I didn't bring a bag. Just my wallet, phone, and the clothes on my back. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the glow of the TV without turning it on. I expected my phone to blow up. It didn't. No apology. No worry. No, come home. Just silence. Around 11 p.m. it buzzed. One message. From Lauren. "You're overreacting." Again. I blinked. A few minutes later, another. "You always make everything about you." My mother was just being honest. And I'm actually grateful she said it because it opened my eyes. Then this. "Maybe I've been blind for too long. You're comfortable with mediocrity, Ethan. And I deserve more than that." No punctuation on that last one. Just a raw, flat truth she must have rehearsed in her head 1,000 times. And then, nothing. I stared at the screen for a long time. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I wanted to write something, anything. Defend myself. Ask if she really meant it. Demand an explanation. Beg. But I didn't. Because somewhere in my gut I already knew, yes, she meant it. And no, she wasn't going to take it back. Cynthia didn't destroy us. Lauren let her. And now the illusion had collapsed completely. The illusion that we were still us, still salvageable, still tethered by love and loyalty. That illusion died the moment she sided with someone who had spent weeks dissecting my worth like a cold case. I didn't sleep that night. And when the sun came up over the gray skyline, I finally said the words out loud. She doesn't love me anymore. Not the real me. And worse? She thinks I'm the one who failed. The first few days at Nick's place passed in a fog. I didn't unpack the overnight bag I brought. I just rotated the same 2 shirts, slept in my clothes, and tried to remember how to function without someone sighing at me from across the dinner table. Nick wasn't the sentimental type. We'd met 10 years ago at a finance seminar, both of us fresh out of grad school and too ambitious for our own good. He had since moved into real estate, stayed single by choice, and swore by minimalist furniture and bourbon neat. His spare room was basically a glorified storage closet, but I didn't care. I wasn't looking for comfort. I just needed somewhere I didn't feel like a ghost. On the second night, he knocked once and walked in, holding 2 cold beers. "Thought you could use this," he said, handing me one. "Thanks." He sat down in the office chair across from the mattress and didn't say anything for a while. That was the thing about Nick, he didn't press. Just let silence do its work. "I didn't think she'd turn like that," I said finally. "She didn't turn," he replied. "She eroded." That word hit me. We talked a bit about the dinner, the messages Lauren sent after I left, the things she said. The part that stuck with Nick was when she called me mediocre. "You're not mediocre," he said flatly. "You're stable. You're grounded. You give a damn." People confuse that for smallness when they're chasing noise. I nodded, took a sip of the beer, swallowed the lump in my throat. But it wasn't just about what she said. It was that she believed it. And once someone believes you're beneath them, there's no speech or gesture that can undo it. The next morning, I got up early and walked down to the corner cafe. Took a table by the window and pulled out my laptop, not for emails or spreadsheets, but to think. For the first time in months, I let myself imagine a future without her. Not as punishment. Not out of pride. Just out of necessity. I thought about my job, maybe asking for a transfer. A new city. A clean break. I thought about my apartment. Whether I'd move out fully or ask her to. How we'd split things. Who would keep what. I thought about going to therapy. Something I'd always avoided, assuming logic could fix emotion. And most of all, I thought about peace. Not happiness, not yet. But peace. Because for the first time in a long time I realized how much noise I'd been living with. How many little jabs, sighs, and silences I'd swallowed just to keep something intact that had already fallen apart. I wasn't sure what came next. But I knew this. I wasn't going back. It took her 4 days to reach out. No apology. No invitation. Just a message. If you're serious about ending this, we should talk. I read it twice. Not let's fix this or I miss you, just logistics. Just cold air wrapped in pixels. Still, I agreed. Because some endings deserve to be said out loud. We met at a quiet cafe halfway between our old apartment and my office. A place with tall windows and soft jazz playing overhead, once our favorite spot back when we had favorite spots. She arrived late. Of course. Wearing the emerald blouse I bought her for her birthday 2 years ago. I stood when she entered, a reflex I hadn't unlearned yet. She didn't acknowledge it. We sat across from each other. A small round table between us, but it may as well have been a wall of glass. I didn't expect you to just leave like that, she said eventually. I didn't leave, I said. I removed myself. From something that stopped feeling like home. She gave a tight nod, eyes fixed on her coffee. You embarrassed me. That hit wrong. I embarrassed you? I asked, stunned. Lauren, you sat there while your mother laid me out like a specimen on a tray and you said nothing. That wasn't embarrassing. That was humiliating. She was just being honest, she muttered. Brutal, maybe? But honest. No, I said. She was being vindictive. And you let her run the show. She stirred her drink, the spoon clinking quietly. Her face gave away nothing. I think, she began, carefully, that things have been off for a long time. Maybe this just revealed it. I've known things were off, I said. But I thought we were supposed to fix them together, not invite outsiders to sit in judgment. I needed someone to help me see things clearly, she said. She did that. You mean, she convinced you I'm the problem? I think you don't dream big enough, she said, suddenly bolder. You settle. You get comfortable. You think showing up is the same as striving. And what do you want, Lauren? I asked, keeping my voice steady. A yacht? A 6-bedroom house? 10 more vacations a year? What version of success do you think fixes what's really broken? I want to feel like I'm moving, Ethan, she said. Forward. Upward. Something. And you think I'm in your way? She hesitated. Then, yes. There it was. Not shouted. Not dramatic. Just clean, deliberate truth. I sat back in my chair and let it wash over me. Then let's stop pretending, I said. This isn't a marriage anymore. It's a polite arrangement with too many ghosts in the walls. She looked down. Didn't argue. I stood, pulled out my wallet, and left a 20 on the table. She didn't look up. Didn't follow. And for the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. Not relief. Not yet. But clarity. And that was a start. Filing for divorce is surprisingly simple. Or maybe I'd just been through so much emotional chaos that signing a few documents and answering a few cold questions felt like a mercy. The lawyer Nick recommended had a no-nonsense tone and a tidy office that smelled like peppermint and printer toner. She looked over the intake form I filled out, tapped her pen against her clipboard, and asked, "Is this contested?" I shook my head. No. She agrees. We're done. She didn't ask why. Just nodded like she'd seen it all before. Because she probably had. I walked out of that office with a thin folder of paperwork, a business card, and the faintest sense that something invisible had shifted in me. Not a weight lifted. Not yet. But a signal like a cracked window letting in new air. Back at Nick's, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror for a long time. I looked older. Or maybe just clearer. My face didn't carry the weight of trying to please someone who couldn't be pleased anymore. My shoulders didn't sag from holding up a relationship that only leaned one way. I texted Lauren that afternoon. Papers are being filed. Lawyer says we can do this clean if we both cooperate. She replied 3 hours later. Okay. Just that. No emotion. No venom. No regret. Like she was confirming a dinner reservation. I started boxing up what few things I still had at our apartment. Nick came with me, just in case. Lauren wasn't home, which was a blessing. I didn't want another scene. I didn't want anything that might shake my resolve. It was strange walking through that place. Our couch. Our bookshelf. The hallway where we once danced barefoot with takeout boxes and cheap red wine. Everything still looked the same. But nothing felt the same. The home was gone. Only the apartment remained. I packed my favorite coffee mug, a few books, a couple of framed photos I couldn't bring myself to throw away. I left the rest. Furniture. Dishes. Artwork we picked together. All of it. Let her keep it. Let her fill it with whatever version of success she thinks will heal her. When I closed the door behind me, I didn't look back. because the part of me that still longed for her had finally gone quiet. The first night in my new apartment, I stood in the center of the living room and just listened. Silence. Not tense silence. Not angry silence. Just the kind that holds no weight. I didn't realize how rare that had become. The place was small. One bedroom. Sparse furniture. The couch was a loaner from Nick until I could find something I liked. The walls were bare, the kitchen barely stocked. But it was mine. I made dinner, nothing fancy. Just pasta, some grilled chicken, a little too much wine. I sat on the floor, ate with a paper napkin and a deep breath. And for the first time in what felt like years, I didn't feel like I had to apologize for existing. The next morning, I woke up without dread. No passive-aggressive silence. Just morning sunlight pushing through dusty blinds and the promise of a new day that didn't already belong to someone else's expectations. I started running again. Nothing intense, just around the neighborhood. Clearing my head. Feeling my body move without that heavy cloak of emotional exhaustion. I called my brother in Denver. We hadn't talked in months. I told him what happened. He didn't sound surprised. Honestly, he said, "You've sounded tired for a long time." "Yeah," I admitted. "I think I forgot what not tired feels like." I went to therapy. I hated it at first. Too many questions. Too much silence. But by the third session, I found myself talking. Really talking. About how love slowly becomes performance. About what it means to feel invisible while sitting across from someone you once couldn't go a day without. I didn't talk about Lauren with venom. I talked about her with grief. Because she hadn't been a villain. Not at first. She'd just become someone who couldn't love me without needing to change me. And I'd let her. Piece by piece. I started doing things I'd neglected. Visiting art galleries. Cooking real meals. Reading books without glancing at the clock every 10 minutes. I even booked a solo weekend trip to the coast. Just me, a quiet inn, and the ocean. That's where it hit me. I was healing. Not fast. Not in a movie montage kind of way, but piece by piece, like someone carefully sweeping up broken glass. Patient, methodical, determined not to bleed again. Time passed, not all at once, not cleanly, but like a tide, pulling me forward even when I wasn't sure I was ready. The pain faded into background noise, the kind that only flares up in quiet moments or in certain songs. But it stopped dictating my days. I stopped rehearsing old arguments in my head. I stopped needing to explain myself to ghosts. At work, something shifted too. Maybe it was the freedom. Maybe it was finally not pouring all my energy into trying to fix what was broken at home. I started closing bigger accounts. My team expanded. I took risks, smart ones. I pitched a project to senior leadership that had been sitting in my drafts for months. They approved it, then promoted me. By the end of the year, I wasn't just doing well. I was thriving. I moved out of the small apartment and into a place with light, real light. Exposed brick, a quiet balcony, space that felt earned. I bought furniture I actually liked, not just what was practical. I even hung a few photos from that solo trip to the coast. I stopped calling it starting over. I started calling it mine. The financial stress that used to weigh down every vacation, every dinner check, every whispered fight. It was gone. I didn't just catch up. I surpassed every benchmark I'd once thought was a dream. And with each milestone, a strange thought crept in. She never gave me the time to bloom. She said I wasn't ambitious enough. She said I was comfortable. But the truth is, I was always building something quietly, patiently. Not for show. Not for applause. Just because I believed in long games and real foundations. And now, with no one tugging me towards someone else's idea of success, I was finally living mine. One night, after a late meeting, I passed by the old cafe where we had that final conversation. I almost didn't recognize it. New paint, new chairs, some rebranding. I stood across the street for a moment. Not mourning, just marveling at how far I'd come since I last sat there. Heart unraveling, dignity on the line. Lauren never texted again. Never called. No drunken "I miss you" messages. No holiday cards. Nothing. But through mutual friends, I heard pieces. She dated someone new, a flashy entrepreneur with money and ego to match. They traveled, posted pictures of rooftop bars and beach views. But 6 months in, it ended. Apparently, he didn't like Cynthia. That made me smile. Not out of spite, but because I knew exactly how that felt. Loving someone who let someone else steer the wheel. And that was the tragedy, really. It wasn't that she wanted more. It's that she didn't believe I'd ever become more. She didn't stay to see what I could be. But I did. I stayed. And that made all the difference. It was a message. Not long. Just enough to make my chest tighten the way it used to when I still hoped she'd reach out. I've been thinking. About everything. I made a mistake. 2 days later, we met at a quiet park near the old apartment. I almost didn't agree to it. But some part of me needed to hear it, not for reconciliation, but for release. Lauren looked different. Tired, maybe? Or just heavier with the weight of everything she hadn't said before. I know I don't deserve your time, she began. I said nothing. I've been replaying everything. How I acted. What I let her say to you. What I didn't say to stop it. Her voice cracked there. I was cruel. Not just at the end. For a long time. You were trying to love me and I made it feel like it wasn't enough. She looked up at me. Eyes red, but not asking for anything. When I told you I needed more, I didn't mean better things. I meant better feelings. But I was too proud to admit that you gave me those before I let other voices twist them into something shameful. I still didn't speak. Just let her continue. I thought I was settling, she said quietly. But I see now. I was protected. Safe. Chosen. And I threw that away. Her voice dropped into something more fragile. I thought leaving would make me feel free. But all it made me feel was wrong. She reached for her bag and pulled something out, a letter, folded and slightly wrinkled. I wrote this months ago. But I couldn't send it. I thought maybe you'd laugh. Or ignore it. But I wanted you to have it. I didn't take it. Not yet. I'm not asking for anything, she said, setting it on the bench between us. I know you've moved on. I can see it in the way you carry yourself now. I have, I said finally. And it was true. But I never stopped regretting the way I made you feel small, she added. You were never small, Ethan. I just couldn't see clearly through all the noise I let in. The wind moved between us, soft and cold. I'm sorry, she whispered. I really, truly am. I looked at the letter. Then at her. And I nodded. Thank you, I said. That means more than you know. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. And I knew what that smile meant. It meant she knew. Knew it was too late. That whatever door had been open for years was now closed, not in anger, but in peace. Because I didn't need her love anymore. I had my own. And that was enough. Looking back, I see it clearly now how easy it is to lose yourself in the quiet unraveling of a relationship. It doesn't always break with shouting or betrayal. Sometimes it erodes in silence. In sidelong glances. In what isn't said when you need to be defended. I stayed too long trying to prove I was enough for someone who had already decided I wasn't. If I've learned anything, it's this: love without respect is a slow kind of suffocation. And no matter how hard you work, how much you give, or how many dreams you bend to fit someone else's vision, you will never be enough for someone who doesn't value your essence. If you ever feel invisible in your own home, hear this from me: you deserve better. Better doesn't mean richer, or louder, or more impressive. It means someone who sees you, who stays when the world gets quiet, who doesn't need convincing that you're worthy. Because you are.